Welcome to Myriad Plots. I'm Jay,
Mike, and tonight we're going to
and
talk about
today,
making characters that don't suck,
unless they're vampires.
unless they're vampires. Um, so let's look at our little list real quick. Okay.
Well, I think the second point I have on that list is the big one, which is to say, when you're making a character, make him to be him or her or it to be someone that will actually work with others. Unless you're doing a solo game, this is probably the most crucial item in making a character that doesn't suck.
Yeah, and there's this fantasy slash urban fantasy archetype of the lone wolf. Um, but people ignore who read those often ignore that in fiction, those characters still interact with other characters.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to play a lone, if you want a good lone wolf character, I was just watching, in fact, the Arrow or Arrow, and there you have a character who has got that sort of brooding lone wolf thing. But I mean, he's a few episodes in, he's already got partners, people he's working with. He's got the cop that he feeds intel to, or and things like that.
Yeah, there's quality scenes there. You have a character who's obviously traumatized, who's not necessarily willing to share information about his past, but the way the other characters play off of it is what really makes it because um, it's played for humor as much as it is for drama.
Hmm.
So that's a great example.
Yeah, yeah. So I think yeah, you want to make a character who will interact with other people, who has reasons to interact with them, has some sort of connection to the other player characters, because you can't be off doing your own stuff all the time. Role playing is a game that you have to share with the other players.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways you can accomplish this. Probably the most prevalent is shared enemy.
Yeah, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's a good one.
So the big bad, especially if it's the main villain of the storyline, um, that really drives it. But that's also not the best necessarily
Well,
unifier.
it can lead to another one, which is a shared past. Where your characters are established to have worked together in the past. You have this sort of camaraderie. Like, oh, remember when we outraced the dragon ninjas or something silly like that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's that makes for really rich role playing, especially if you don't make them define anything about their past
Yeah,
other than they work together and like kind of the parameters. Like you were both in the for a modern game, you were both served in Iraq together. Like that leaves a lot of rich open space for for players to create stories between one another. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. So I mean, you can get a lot of good stuff out of that. Other ways that you can join characters, they could be relatives.
We did that one game that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I've done that in a few games actually, uh, and it was kind of interesting. The one game that I did as a player, we had two characters who were cousins. They both grew up in the same small village. We all knew the same people, and it was pretty fun. And that reminds me of another thing: is to have shared friends. So like if you both have like the same mentorish figure in your past, then that's a natural thing for you to have a connection. Because then, oh, what if what if old Dimple goes missing? Well, then we got to go find him because he taught us magic.
Yeah, and you know, there's also an element of richness there because you could have those in character conversations,
Yeah,
which I love having, and it's just like, remember that time he did this, that, oh,
yeah,
crazy old man Tom, doing all this crazy stuff, you know.
yeah.
And as a player, I really enjoy that. I've done that with a few different characters that I had
Mhm.
solid history connections to with another player.
Yeah,
It always adds something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it basically boils down to having some sort of shared past or a shared interest. If you're both characters who are obsessed with necromancy, then that uh, brings to mind that there's going to be some you guys are going to be talking about that.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I think
might,
it also helps like to allow players, and as a player, to be have the ability to add richness not only to in that sense to that topic, to say like, oh, I've heard of this spell that did as X, Y, and Z. I mean, it doesn't have to exist.
right. But then that also brings up ideas of like you could then plan together. Oh well, let's go find out if that spell exists. I heard there may be a tomb somewhere nearby that the spell book is that holds that spell is sealed up.
Yeah, or like, especially in like mage, if you as the apprentice can think of it, there's a good chance maybe someone else thought of it before.
Right.
You know, so if you don't know how to do it, maybe there's somebody who does and who has.
Yeah.
That's a large part of those immortality quests in stories.
Yeah.
Everyone insists there has to be a way, but no one seems to have accomplished it yet.
Well, depends on the story. Sometimes someone has accomplished it, and you just discover that at the very end that, oh no, you didn't want to be immortal that way.
Oh yeah, oops.
Yeah.
Old World of Darkness.
I was actually thinking of an episode of Batman.
Razagul?
Yeah, well, Ra's al Ghul goes on a quest to find. I think it's a source of immortality, or he's actually. It finds out that it's just another Lazarus pit, and there's like this horrible, creepy, mummified, uh, uh, ancient sorceress who's just waiting there to suck their life forces out.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of rich source material that you can use to have a shared history with. I mean, we've mentioned a few,
Yeah.
but almost any event that is relevant to a game, you know,
Yeah.
especially if it's a modern game that you could put in there, like, shared history of like 9/11, shared history of a shared experience in college, a
Right.
random attack, both
Yeah.
accused of the same murder. Uh,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's. I mean, basically any sort of significant event that can tie two characters together nicely.
yeah, and that's the baseline for making a character that doesn't suck, because it provides you a baseline of creating a character that is unique and not a cookie cutter
Yeah.
role
Yes.
playing character.
Yeah. And so that was the first point I put on our list of adding a second dimension to your character, or a third, or a fourth, whatever.
I would, my first role playing character in like a tabletop role playing game that ran for a significant period of time was a gangrel who lost his memories,
Okay.
used claws, and because I couldn't think of a name at the time, they forced me to use my own name, which stuck. Um, that character on his own completely sucked.
Yes.
Objectively, it was basically just like, oh, I need something. I'm
Yeah.
going to put this together real quick. Um, I ended up playing that character for 5 years.
All right.
So, because we were dedicated to that game, the dimensions
Yeah.
of that character grew, and I learned how to. But I never got over the fact that that was my main character for 5 years, and I couldn't. I really couldn't change it because I was so involved in the storyline, and we
Mm.
were playing very much heavily Classic World of Darkness, Meta Plot, and deep
Oh,
involved in the story. Um,
yeah.
but I mean, my next role-playing character after that, almost in response to that, was Dominic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, my next long-term one, I had an Asimite anti-tribute or
Mm.
something in that mix, but like my
Right.
next major character, one that really lasted, was Dominic.
Yeah, Dominic had a lot of dimension to him. That was an interesting character. There aren't too many that will chop off their own arm to please their god.
Well, yeah, and it was interesting for me because I was like, okay, my last character was a combat munchkin, um, and he very much fit the don't do this stereotype of lone wolf. You know,
Mhm.
I'm a strong man.
Right.
So I made an elf that was dedicated to a god that I wasn't familiar with at all,
Well, I
and
made it up.
that you made up that in a world that I was completely unfamiliar with, 'cause I wasn't even familiar with D&D. So on top of the fact that you made up the campaign setting, I
Yeah.
didn't know the game at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There were aspects of my of that setting that were not completely unfamiliar. I mean, I'm just reminded of the fact that I based the map on Europe.
Well, right, yeah, and there's that. But I mean, Europe doesn't usually have like steampunk magic
That's true.
trains.
Yeah. Yeah. It is that was not a significant part in European history. Yes, I mean Dominic had a lot of personality. Yeah. So I mean, on the face of it, he's an elven cleric of the goddess of machines.
Yes.
But you brought a lot more to the table than just that. I mean, he wasn't even raised by elves.
Yeah, he was raised by a mentor.
Yeah, he was raised by a mentor.
He was an orphan question mark.
Yes.
Like I didn't actually want him to necessarily be an orphan, but I didn't want to know if he was an orphan or not an orphan.
Hmm.
And that I think grew out of my original character because I
Right.
wrote this big long history for my other character, trying to justify all that other crap.
Right.
And I think I felt like I got a lot more out of just letting Chris tell me a story, so I wanted to give you the freedom to kind of play with things.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I'm trying to remember what other things. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that came out later in play about the character that was really interesting. Like when you acquired the mechanical arm and decided that becoming part machine would help bolster your faith or be a visible sign of your devotion. Uh,
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think that goes back to the dimensions because leaving space in the character from the beginning
that's a
is
good. Yeah, I mean, uh, you can do a lot to like create character for to give your character more dimensions. And we'll probably talk about that in a sec. But one thing, I agree. It's a really good idea to leave some things open because you never know what's going to pop up in play, or that you're going to find out in play doesn't work well.
right. Right. There's some things that you want to keep solid, like those connections to other characters, because they're important for the story and for the storyteller. but there's a lot of other places where you don't have to fill in every single
Yeah,
detail.
yeah, yeah. So let's see. Let's talk about those details, though. Um, see, I mean, one really easy way is just to sort of focus on like the little meaningless bits of the character, like their quirks.
Yeah.
What is your character like? What does he dislike? Does he have a favorite food?
Does he bite his nails?
Yeah, exactly. And that brings a lot of personality to a character.
Yeah.
What does it
Yeah.
say that he's always biting his nails? Is he anxious all the time? Is it just sort of a nervous habit? What is it that makes him do that sort of thing?
There's a lot of smokers in role playing games, I find.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially in sort of a urban fantasy setting.
Yeah, and there's that cool image of like, old school cool
Yeah,
that I think people conform to. I like the idea of like also of somebody who's quitting smoking, like that's like a cool kind of, very modern, very common thing.
right. Yeah, my last vampire character, in fact, was a former smoker, and so he did a lot of. Uh, he, that character was interesting in that he was a master of disguise. So he had several personas that he used. But they all had the same commonality of nicotine addiction.
Okay.
So, like one of them would only feed off smokers. One of them carried around cigars and would smoke them. It didn't do anything for him because he's a vampire, but
Right.
he would do it just for sort of placebo effect. And plus, lighting up in front of vampires just fit that character, that persona's personality very well. It's like
Freaks
fire.
him out.
Yes, exactly. So that was a fun little mannerism I gave that character.
I think a good way of doing it is to basically give them one of each, like a dislike and a habit, or a tick,
Yeah,
Like, and that doesn't really fill in too many details. Like, you can do, like, especially if you do, like you said, favorite food, or even a hobby. Like, how none of these characters have hobbies, it seems like. Like, all their hobbies are like martial arts, kendo. And that's like every game I've played in. It's been like at least two characters. Their hobby has been like beating people up.
yeah, it is fairly common. I'm just thinking back to my to the mage game and the other games like that. It's like
And that,
hobby, Aikido.
and that includes my characters. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was also thinking about the time it takes to develop those hobbies. So
Mm,
like if you have a character whose hobby is like woodworking,
that's a
and
lot of that's a lot of time and effort there.
yeah. Um so I like that. I like hobbies. I also like characters like, in real world you have characters that make certain bad choices, people who make certain bad choices.
Mm.
I'm thinking right now of like the friend who's always dating the wrong guy or girl for them.
So character flaws.
Yeah, but maybe one doesn't even really have a in-game effect, or
Yeah,
maybe someday. But like one that like, if you always have like every time your characters meet up, they always have this story of how their latest relationship has gone wrong. It's a fun thing to do as a character because you can be like, I was going out with this girl and you know she ordered $60 worth of food. I didn't have the money for it, so I'm a little short right now. You know?
yeah. No, I did a D&D character like that where uh, he would always have some sort of anecdote from his past of just totally crazy, insane adventure that he went on, and it would always end badly for him. It's like, yes, and then I saved the village. unfortunately, the sonic after effects of my spells caused an avalanche thereafter.
And destroyed the village.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, those sort of like little quirks. I mean, they don't have to have game effects, but in fact, I think it's better that they don't have game effects. Um, but they give you they add that extra special something to the character.
One of the NPCs in my original Mage game was murdered um, because she was allergic to peanuts, and somebody laced her food with peanuts.
Ouch.
She was an adamantine arrow, like super badass, and she was a um, she didn't have any life magic, and they just laced her food with peanuts.
Ouch. That's horrible.
Yeah, I thought that was like a really interesting way of just avoiding the whole a magical thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quirks, man. You know.
Yep. Quirks can go a long, long way. So let's see. So on a sort of broader spectrum of things, and we've already sort of covered this a little bit, but just finding a place for your character in the world, like giving him or her some history in the world, tying them to a organization or a place is also a good way of giving your character a bit more uh, more dimensions, because
Yeah,
that also ties you into the bigger story of the world.
and this goes back to the whole no lone wolves thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a little different because this isn't even talking about the players. It's like I'm like it's really hard as a character to feel like you care about anything if you have no friends, family, or anything. And that seems like a trope that just won't die. You know?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
The the hardest characters for me to to run as a GM are the ones who are not tied to the setting in some way. Because I motivates your character to go off and do something. And if you're not tied into anything, then you're just sort of following the other players around because you don't have anything else better to do.
right. And for like one of the things for me is it's like how many damn orphans can exist?
Yeah, there are an awful lot of orphans, especially in fantasy worlds.
Yeah. And I
I
guess
find,
to some degree that can make sense, but it's more fun if it happens in game to become orphans.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I find modern day settings you're less likely to get the orphan. I mean, they may never, the family may never be mentioned, but it's usually not. It's the assumption is usually not that they have no one.
Yeah, but I almost like the family to be present to some
Yeah,
extent.
I mean, well, that helps give you more dimensions because then you have to define how you relate to these people now, which could be
Yeah.
very complicated if you're playing vampire now. It's like how do you talk to your sister, since you've become a vampire?
How
Or
do you explain that you're only awake at night?
yes, exactly.
You know, and I don't know about most people, but like, um, being at work is not an excuse to not talk to your family.
No, no, it's not going to work. Not for very long.
Not for very long. Um, and also, just like, why would you want to? I mean, it's kind of cool to think like, oh, you know, my character doesn't have many friends or family, but man, they really love their bowling team. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they have to have friends or had friends, depending on the situation that the game begins at.
Yeah. Um, Finding a place in the world for your character, I feel like is a vital. If anything else, you can have no other information about your character other than they're a former soldier and they have two friends. and that's enough to give your character enough substance enough to play.
Hmm.
Which I think will kind of lead us to taking a concept and giving it a twist.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you can start with just sort of your stock concept, stock character like orc barbarian or something, and you can give it a twist, and that can be enough to get you started as well. Like maybe this is an orc barbarian who actually wants to cease to be uneducated. He feels self-conscious about his lack of education growing up in the wilds, raised by wolves. And he wants to learn to read and things like that.
Or, in the case of, I guess, Drow, which is like, one of the most overplayed versions of the elves. Like, it's a Drow who just doesn't give a shit about the Spider Queen or the elves.
Yeah.
They're just on the surface, like, trying to find money or, you know,
Yes.
something else,
Yeah.
some other objective other than, like, the meta plot.
Right. Yeah. They're not just trying to be good, as a rebellion against the Drow, and so trying to get that next magic scimitar
Yeah, exactly. What happens if they're a Drow ranger that uses, like, I don't know, daggers or long swords
or bow.
or a bow, and then they like don't have a panther, they have a dog instead. I don't know, something crazy like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, making carbon copies of existing characters, trying to recreate some character from a book is generally it's moving in the direction of a character that sucks. You need to make him or her someone who can stand on their own.
Yeah, and there's easy ways of doing that other than um, just without really altering the spirit of the character too much.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of my favorite examples is Rob played this character called Cryptic, which was based off his character of Kesdrix that he played like when we were in middle school. And in his head, they're very much the same character. In reality, they were very different characters.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I've been doing something recently where I've been trying to complete certain characters' storylines because they end up in games that die. And so one thing I've been doing is like reimagining that character in a different setting. For instance, like what would this let's see, what would this fantasy based spy master be like if he was a vampire? How would you build a character that on the surface has you know has roughly the same modus operandi hang-ups uh, source. So I mean that's one way to do it is just to take a character who you like but who doesn't fit in the milieu that you're playing in, and then adapting them there. So rather than say play Drist in the Drist the scimitar wielding drow in a fantasy world, you try and make a character like that in let's see, something reasonably challenging. Uh,
Space,
what's that?
space,
Space. There you go. Drist in space.
Brits in space, and not Star Wars space, like Firefly space.
Okay. Yeah. So Firefly space. All right. Well, let's see. Well, he's probably not going to be dual wielding scimitars. Uh, but he is somebody who's come from an evil system. Oh, he's a redeemed reaver. Somehow,
Oh, that's so cool.
somehow,
See?
somehow. Oh, maybe. I mean, we got to come up with some sort of rationale for how he's, you know, shaken off the whole cannibal thing. Maybe he's part of like the whatchamacallit, the core worlds. They did experiments on captured reavers, and he's managed to escape. But he's they sort of fixed him or reset him.
Reset him or something, or
Right.
maybe like uh, he wasn't as badly affected by whatever it was that did it to him, did
Right.
it to them. You know?
And some event happened. He got hit in the head or something, and he's got some amnesia, but he can also he knows what he was and is trying to become a good person again. And so maybe he's got some nasty like crazy handmade knives that he uses, and yeah, we'll give him a pet too because Drist has a pet. We'll give him a pet.
Yeah, like maybe like he has a cat or something.
Right.
See, that's cool. That right there, he's good at tracking because like he's not a ranger, but like he used to hunt people,
Yes, exactly.
and you have a pretty badass character right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the same as like uh, I played a character that was essentially a Jedi in Numenera.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a game where it's like not hard to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would
Um,
imagine it would be.
but it fit. Like, I played a Jack and I gave him the focus like um I think it was telepathic or
Hmm.
telekinesis.
Okay, telekinesis seems more Jedi.
Yeah, so I did a was it charming or suave? I did basically no, it was empathic, an empathic Jack with telekinesis.
Okay.
So like I can read emotions and I can move and I can move objects and I can do a mix of both the nano abilities and combat abilities and he has a firm belief in justice, but he wasn't a Jedi because there was no Jedi Order,
Right.
uh, and there was no lightsabers,
Yeah.
and there was no like I didn't like start talking about the Force, you know, you know.
Yeah.
I
You
made
were
it so
Jedi in spirit.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was playing a lot of Star Wars, and I was like, like it'd be cool to explore that tension of light side to dark side without explicitly having like some evil emperor like come to the dark side.
Yeah.
As I like that exploration. So the character ended up very different.
Yeah. That's the idea is that you create a character who's a little bit different. And as you play him, he'll deviate further and further from the source material, and that's fine.
Yeah,
The goal is a
and that's
character
something,
you enjoy playing.
and that's something I really want to bring up, which is we've talked in the past about like party cohesion.
Mm.
It is on the player to build relationships with other players in game, to build
Yes.
relationships with other characters, and that is what makes those groups so much fun.
Hmm.
It's not on the storyteller; it's on the player because I find um, repeatedly when I take control of that aspect of my character, I enjoy the game tenfold.
Yeah, character relationships is a really rich part of role playing, and I gotta say, as a GM, I enjoy nothing more than just sitting back and watching two characters banter back and forth to each other.
Yeah, and it's like, like my Colt had detailed conversations with Valkyrie about like life and like
Yes.
dating and child rearing, and like
Yep.
like mage real life balance, you know.
Yeah.
And him and Mammon had detailed conversations about business and character and where they were going with it, and it was a lot of fun. It was just like it was a real relief from the major shit the characters were dealing with.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so many wonderful conversations. I can think of. I mean, even the stuff that is dealing with the heady stuff can be really awesome with that. Once you get two characters who have some real depth. So like I did a hunter game, and we had two characters who, on the face of it, are pretty similar. There was a uh, former CSI turned uh, basically, I don't know what to call him, nurse, sort of, maybe. His job really sucked. Let's just leave it at that. uh, he was the doctor who had to deal with people donating sperm or something like that.
You.
Yeah. And then we had the psychologist who is also psychologist slash pharmaceutical uh, expert. And so on the face of it, we have two characters who are just totally masters of medicine. Yeah, their skill sets are very similar, lots of mental skills, but their personalities could not be more different. We have the CSI guy is really grounded in reality. He's seen weird stuff. You know, he was probably the first character in the group to actually see something supernatural when he discovered spiders inside somebody's head.
That would do it.
But which is what cost him his job because he kept talking about the spiders in the brain and people just made jokes about him and it just was a downward spiral. But he approaches everything very rationally and he's got all these facts to back things up, whereas the psychologist was just a slow spiral to madness because he uncovers a conspiracy and just sort of he realizes if I tell people about this, they're going to kill me, and so he's got all this paranoia going on. He can't talk to anybody about it. Everyone else can turn to him for
Yeah.
their psychological counseling, but not him. And so he's
no one to talk to.
spiral. Yeah. And so the conversations that came out between these two were just amazingly hilarious because the psychologist is slowly losing it and becoming sort of manic and losing his empathy really or his ability to like console patients. And the CSI guy's like, what is wrong with you? Do you have any bedside manner whatsoever?
And that's important because those conversations highlighted the journey the psychologist was having of his descent into madness. Whereas if normally when you play a character with madness, like a Malkavian, people generally act that out by having them do just like stupid weird shit.
Yeah, we dealt with a lot of madness in that game, and it was all amazingly great. And we had different types of madness too that were popping up in the games. There was one character was getting all freaked out by all the weird stuff that was going on, like these people who would come to her office who didn't exist, and who would be all blurry on the camera footage. And so she would just take pictures with her cell phone of anyone she met, just to make sure that they weren't blurry in the picture, so she knew that they were real.
That's creepy. That's super creepy.
Yeah, my wife is awesome.
I should have known it was Grace. Yeah, so I mean, like, and those relationships, I think, really are what make a character great. If you start with, some quirks, a general concept with a little bit of a twist, even if it's one that's lifted from a book series, and then you work to develop those relationships in game, especially with other PCs, because
Yeah,
the NPC relationships just aren't quite the same.
yeah, no, they're weaker. It's only one way for the most part. So
Yeah. And then also the final thing is I think developing a shared goal. Um,
that's a good group thing.
yeah.
If the group as a whole has a mission, or I mean, not even a mission, but like something that they're all sort of working towards. Saving the city or building the best library in town.
Right, but I think that there's one that's on the storyteller, and there's one which is the main plot line, right?
Yeah.
And then there's shared goals on the side that I think are important for the players
Hmm.
to build together. It may be more focused on one character than another character, but getting the other players' help by request, by a PC saying, "Will you help me with
Oh,
this?"
yeah. That is, yeah. I wish my current group did that more.
Yeah, I mean, because that moment is a moment of connection that
Yeah.
builds so much both about like 'cause that's what changes it from being a character that's all right, it's in a game to being like, wow, this group is gonna do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my favorite part of my Apocalypse World game was when Violet managed to convince the rest of the group that they should all take a 100-mile journey through post-apocalyptic Florida to liberate Miami from the dictator.
How'd that go?
We're still working it out.
Okay,
They have taken down all of his lieutenants, and it only remains to take him down.
fair enough.
I think a session or two, and then we'll know.
And those characters are growing together.
Some of them, some of them are well, they're not really growing together. They're growing.
They're growing, but not so together.
Yeah,
Well,
I
that's the good
think.
thing. The good thing about Apocalypse World, though, is eventually they retire them.
Yeah, yeah. Though I really want to see what um, what Alex's character does, though, because Gator is developing a real history.
Interesting.
Yeah, he has a tragic past that has been unveiled with blood and murder and death, as you would expect.
Yes, from a gun lugger, absolutely.
Yeah, but I shouldn't spoil too much because I'm several months behind on getting the log out.
Fair enough. Um, do you have anything else you want to add, Jay?
uh, No, I don't think so. I think that covers about everything that I think if you follow that advice, you will have a character that doesn't suck.
Okay. Um, why don't we next time? What do you want to talk about? Any ideas?
I have a couple ideas. We could talk. We talked a little bit about madness. It might be nice to talk about how to deal with madness in game. What mechanics you can use, how you can portray it. The other idea is just straight up death, character death. Is it a good idea? Is it bad? How can it be done well?
Uh, why don't we do character death,
All right, death it is.
and then we can do madness the time after that.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks for listening in. This has been a slightly shorter. Follow us on Twitter, no_obsession. Feel free to message us because I'm better at responding than I am necessarily at tweeting out.
Yep, and we'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time.